Dr. Mike. I am so excited. I've been looking forward to interviewing you. You're amazing, what you've achieved, what you've done. And my audience is going to be totally fascinated because it's the first time I'm actually interviewing an astronaut and someone like yourself that has done so much and has turned your experience into life lessons. I mean, you have such an incredible bio. So I'm just going to say a couple of things. You're a NASA astronaut, you're a Columbia professor, you're the author of Moonshot and the New York Times bestselling author of and a regular on the Big Bang Theory and the first human to tweet from space. I love that. That's so cool.
Right.
Oh, I love that. Well, welcome to Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess and tell us your full bio. People would love to hear who you are, what you do, and what you're going to help us with today. So thank you for joining the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Dr. Caroline. I sure appreciate it. You hit some of the highlights there. I grew up just outside of New York City in Queens, just out of Queens in New York City in a town called Franklin Square on Long Island. I watched Neil Armstrong take the first steps on the moon. I'm old enough to remember that. And I was 6 years old when it happened. And it made me want to grow up to be an astronaut. But by the time I was 8 years old, I just thought that was impossible. How do you do that? I was afraid of heights. It just wasn't going to work. I thought I was going to be a military test pilot like my hero, Neil Armstrong. When I was a senior in college studying engineering, I went and saw a movie called The Right Stuff. It's based on a book by Tom Wolfe. That got me thinking about the space program again. I decided I needed to somehow figure out to be a part of it. Didn't know if I'd ever become an astronaut, but I thought at least I wanted to try to contribute. And went to graduate school and started applying when I was eligible to be an astronaut. When NASA made an announcement, I was rejected outright. My first try, a couple of years went by, they made another announcement. They were looking for people. I got rejected outright that second time. A third time, I tried a couple of years after. I got an interview, so I was a finalist. And then I was rejected after the interview. I failed the eye exam. Went through some eye training to try to get that overturned and it worked. And I was able to apply a fourth time and was selected as an astronaut in 1996. So the astronaut class of 1996. Got to fly twice on the space shuttle to the Hubble Space Telescope, was a spacewalker there, was at NASA for 18 years and then left NASA to join the faculty at Columbia University, where I'm a professor now. And do all kinds of fun stuff. Like you mentioned, some TV with the Big Bang Theory. I do some work at the Intrepid Museum here, written a couple of books, do a lot of speaking. I enjoy doing that, speaking to audiences. And really that's where the book came from. My latest book, Moonshot, which is coming out on December the 5th. That is based on lessons learned from my time at NASA, but really those lessons, those takeaways that seem to be most important to the audiences that I was speaking to, things about teamwork and leadership and not giving up and finding other ways to get around a problem and appreciating what's around us, being amazed by the world around us, getting ready to pivot, things like that, building up trust in an organization. So it was a series of lessons that more or less told to me by the audience of what they responded to the most positively. And that's what the new book is all about.
That's very exciting. But you also, just one thing that you left off, you actually, I'm going to say this because I'm so proud of you for doing this. I mean, I love this little thing. You went from being a gangly, scrawny, working class kid from Long Island with bad eyesight and a fear of heights to a NASA astronaut where the mission, Dr. Massimino participated in significantly increased Hubble's discovery potential and led to the award of the Nobel Prize in Physics for the discovery of dark energy during spacewalks. That's a mouthful. It's phenomenal. You're a fellow, full Italian. I'm half Italian. I didn't even say your first name right, but that is amazing. Tell us about that. Before we dive into all the great psychology and life lessons, just tell us about you, your career, the experience, that particular contribution to dark energy. Amazing.
Yeah. So the Hubble Space Telescope was launched in 1990. I was not an astronaut then. And it had 5 missions. There were 5 shuttle missions after they deployed the telescope to upgrade and repair the telescope. And I was on the final 2 of those missions. And so what we do in those missions is we place equipment to upgrade things. Things wear out, you put new stuff in, also new technology comes along, and you put that in so the telescope can see further into the universe. So what I ended up being good at, I guess, as an astronaut was spacewalking. I really enjoyed that, getting in a spacesuit and going out into space,
Amazing.
work on things. And it was glorious being able to view our planet from that altitude. Hubble's 100 miles higher, for example, than space station. So we get to see more of a curve of the planet, and like looking into paradise. It's like looking into that. I felt it. We're very lucky to be here. We're such a beautiful place to live, such a beautiful home that we all share. And what you mentioned with the Hubble, what was very rewarding about the Hubble is that I think I felt, and so did everyone else involved, that it was worth what prices we were taking to go to space to try to upgrade the telescope, because the science that came from the astronomy that was done with Hubble, and it still is being done with Hubble, and now we all the James Webb Telescope, which is very exciting, making more discoveries. They both kind of work together to show the beauty of the universe, but also how the universe works, and understanding not only what's around us, but also how maybe we fit into this whole big picture of what's going on here with our life on our planet. And maybe there's life other places, or other places that could harbor life, or where did we come from? What's at the beginning? How did we get here? What's at the beginning of the universe? Trying to understand that. How did it form? And we learn more and more about it through discoveries made by now the James Webb, but also the Hubble for the past 30 years or so. So you mentioned with the discovery of dark energy, that was thing that was discovered by using the telescope by astronomers. Things when Hubble was first launched that they knew they wanted to try to verify, to find out. Like, they thought there were black holes out there, Caroline.
Yeah.
No, for sure. But Hubble found them. And here they are. And they thought there were planets in other solar systems. People thought that's probably the case. But Hubble again verified that there were. So they would sure things, oh, let's go look for this stuff. But with the discovery of dark energy, what was interesting about that was that it was a group of young astronomers who were using the mathematical data that is provided by the telescope. They were trying to calculate the expansion rate of the universe. So the theory is we had the Big Bang, that there was an explosion back at the beginning, created the universe, and the universe is expanding because it's like, they have a big explosion and things are just going out there, right? And they thought, because everything else has looked like this up until this discovery was made, is that as things expand, they also slow down. So they get a ball, a baseball, a football, or whatever, a tennis ball, and you throw it, it's going to have an initial velocity, and eventually it's going to slow down and hit the ground, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the way they thought, what is the expansion rate? How is the universe slowing down in this expansion? And what they calculated was a negative number. So they saw this negative number, they didn't know what it was, and they did some more calculations.
Yeah.
Found that it was actually speeding up. And so with the instrument that we put, they needed to verify this by looking at supernovae. And we put in this new camera on my first mission called the Advanced Camera for Surveys. And that gave them the capability to make the calculations necessary to verify that what they thought was happening really was. And that information led to the awarding of the Nobel Prize Physics for the discovery of dark energy. So pretty cool stuff. And
it's incredible.
Yeah, the more we learn about the universe, the more we explore. I think it really comes down to we learn about ourselves and trying to understand how we fit in and how we can enjoy the universe around us, and particularly the planet around us, because where we live. Because it was great doing that work. I really enjoyed my time working as an astronaut in space, of course, but also the view of our planet and appreciation for how lucky we are to be here was a big part of my time in space. And a big part of my time at NASA was lessons that I learned from the culture we had and teamwork, because we had to work together. We had ups and downs and tragedies, and we made mistakes just like everyone else does. But I think we were pretty good at sticking together and working together and learning from our mistakes and trying to have the kind of culture where we could succeed both individually and as a team. So it was great to find space, but also it was just a great experience, and the work I got to do on the ground as well.
What an incredible overview of a life that is kind of a life that shifts perspective completely. You look at the world in a different way. As you say, if you're floating above none of us can visualize it until we've actually been in the place where you have, but to have that view of the world and to have that insight and experience. Can you just talk a little bit about that? I mean, you've the teamwork, but let's talk about your own experience. How did that, were you up there moonwalking and looking down at, what did that do to you and how you saw life and all these big questions? And then I'd love to talk about the teamwork and things, because I know people are always fascinated with that. And the teamwork side goes to the culture of community. You mentioned that the working together as community, respecting the individual, but the individual is only as strong as the community. And if you look at our current life in America, has become very individualistic and isolation and loneliness and all those things. And I'd love you to sort of, there's two things I've thrown at you, but I know you're very able to handle both of those deep questions because you just speak so well. I love how you teach things.
No. We need to do one at a time, Caroline.
One at a time, I'll remind you. So
the first one was when I looked
personal,
at
your personal.
Yeah. Well, the space experience, and particularly during the spacewalks where you're not looking through a window, you're out there, and you're really out there. It's kind of like looking at the fish through the window of an aquarium, right? So, they're pretty fish, but you're kind of outside, looking, and then versus being a scuba diver. Now you're interacting with that environment and you're kind of part of it. And that's what I felt like a real spaceman when I first went out for a spacewalk. I was lucky enough to get to do 4 of those over my
wow.
And the view of the planet is so compelling. You have to stick to doing your work. And in my first spacewalk, I didn't really look around all that much, believe it or not. I kind of stuck to business. My second spacewalk felt more comfortable. It was actually easier. It wasn't as filled with activity, the second one I was on. And I had a break in the action where I could really just lose myself in the view of our planet. And it was a day pass, meaning the sun was out, because you're going around the planet every 90 minutes. So you're after that 45 minutes in sunlight, more or less, and about 45 minutes in darkness. So the sun illuminating the earth, and I could see it very clearly. And one of the thoughts that went through my mind was, this is like a view from heaven. And then I thought, it's more beautiful than that. It's what heaven must look like. And not necessarily, I think it was somewhat of a spiritual interpretation, but not necessarily religious. It was just what went through my mind. But we were just this is beautiful. I can't imagine any place being as beautiful where we are. And you turn your head in the other direction, Caroline, and it's kind of cool looking at the stars. But, we've checked out the neighborhood. We got nowhere to go. And we've got this beautiful place to live. And you can see the atmosphere. It's so thin. It's just a blue line above the planet. And the size relationship is like, if you think of the earth as an onion, the top thin layer of the onion is the size relationship of our atmosphere and the rest of our planet. And that's the only thing that's keeping us alive. The only reason I could, that's because I'm wearing a life support. If anything would happen to that spacesuit, or if I didn't have that with me, I wouldn't last very long out there. It'd be pretty quick. Then it wouldn't go well. But you appreciate the view of the planet from that standpoint in that spacesuit, and you see its beauty. But the other thing, it stayed with me. But the other thing I think about is also what's missing when you're up there and doing the planet. And what's missing is a lot of people. You have a couple of crewmates with you, but everybody else is down here. That's where everybody is. That's where your family and friends. Everything. We don't have any weather in space, so we don't get cool breezes. We don't get rain. So I try not to complain about the weather anymore. Believe it or not, you don't get certain smells, good and bad. You don't get those things there, and you're seeing it from afar. It's kind of like you're looking at it, and you see. I think to see it, the Earth in its true beauty, I think it's meant to be seen from space as a wonderful view. But to really engage it and enjoy it and interact with it, we need to be down here. And so what it gave me was an appreciation for how lucky we are to be here. And you can see the beauty of our planet and our love in the faces of other people. I live in New York City. I travel and go other places, but there's a lot of people in New York who choose to do that. You can go on a New York City subway or walk the streets, and I see lots of people and the rhythm to it. And the things we have built up in this planet, it's amazing. The architecture, the buildings, and then the natural beauty of the planet, our sunsets and the cloud formations and mountains and the oceans and the trees. It's fall here right now. And so the beautiful color in the leaves of the trees is just incredible. And I think I didn't appreciate all of that as much till I went to space and came back and I think of the view of the planet and how special that was. But I think of what I was looking at was our home that we get to interact with every day. So it's given me a different perspective. I think we're in a paradise. I know there's bad things happening all the time. And typically it's people doing things they shouldn't be doing. And there's terrible things that are going on, unfortunately, in our world right now. But we really were set up, I think, for happiness. We were given a beautiful place to live with opportunities for happiness. And that's what I took away from my experience of viewing the planet.
Wow, that's beautiful. That complete shift in perspective. I mean, I just feel just listening to you, I just feel a whole new kind of appreciation, as you say, for that sunset and just what we can do and what we've done as humans. It's amazing.
It is amazing, and we should be amazed. And the other thing I'll add, friend, if I may,
of course,
is that and this happened to be more, I think, on my second flight when I started feeling like this, is that I have a different perspective of where I'm from, of what home is. I've been at the beginning. I'm an American. I'm also an Italian citizen. I was an American first. I've only been a couple of years as an Italian citizen. My Italian heritage allowed me to apply for citizenship.
Beautiful.
But I think of myself now differently. I'm a citizen of the earth. And what happened was, it was really the way I think about things is that when I was a little kid, I grew up just outside of New York, as I mentioned, in Franklin Square, just outside of Queens, New York. And that's when I was a little kid, when my school was there and the park I played in and the library and my block and home and everything. That was where I grew up pretty much through high school. I felt that way. And when I went to college, I started to feel more like I was in New York, because you meet people from different parts of the country and the world. I identified as a New Yorker. And then as an astronaut, certainly I had the American flag on my arm both days when I went to work, and flight suit or whatever I was doing. And I was an American, I'm from the United States. Right. But after going to space, and it was on my second space flight that I began to think more like this. Looking at the planet, I started to think that more of that's where I'm from. You look at the universe maybe, but you look back and you see home. That's home. Wow. And everything I've ever known and all the people that we know about that have existed have all been in that one place. And all of us are still here. I mean, we go to space once in a while. Maybe we'll start sending people to the moon again, but everybody still is here. We're all share that same home, no matter where you're from, no matter who you are, what part of the world you live in. We're all from that one place. And that's when I think of home, I think of Earth. I think of that is, and it's a place that we all share that same home. We have that in common, no matter where we're from. So that was the other thing. It was not just that we're living in a paradise, but it's a paradise that all of us call home.
That's really beautiful and very, very, very moving, and also so important. A message that needs to be screamed from the rooftops of every single place. If you look at all it takes away that, I'm sure you've seen that just from listening to you speak now, that there's no the cultural divides, all these divides that are in the world, and all the arguments about politics and not accepting each other. It's just such a waste of time, energy, beauty, love. Just hearing you talk, I mean, I think like that anyway, but just seeing it now, trying to see it through your eyes and hear what you're saying, it just shows the unity of humanity and this beautiful planet we live on. And if anything, that's the message that I assume you're trying to bring to people.
Absolutely. And the way you put it was beautiful as well. I agree. And we are giving this beautiful place to live, and we should be appreciative of it. And I think if we can think of it in that way, that we all share, I think that would be good. I don't know if we'll ever get there. I think we will eventually, but it might take a while.
It might take a while, but a key thing that I'm hearing you say often, a word you said a lot, is perspective. And that perspective is vital, in terms of the world that I work in and the field that I've been in. One of the major things that I had to teach my patients, myself, and the research I do is being able to stand back and take and teach people to actually get another perspective. I actually call it the multiple perspective advantage. And as you were describing that moonwalk, I almost feel like I want to quote you and say, I have spoken to Dr. Mike, and he talked, it would be just such an amazing analogy, because it's key to us as humans being more human, is being able to stand back and look at ourselves and get another perspective. And when you do that, you become more open, more expansive, more accepting of different types of people and cultures, and listening to other people's points of view instead of fighting. And that's sort of the sense I'm getting from you, which is like
I agree. Yeah, keep
totally.
Going.
So now you lecture at, I mean, one of the things you do now is lecture at Columbia University. So obviously okay, tell us what you're lecturing in, and what do you talk to your students about? Because I know it's probably science related stuff as well, but do you find you get into the deeper things of life? I'm very fascinated to hear what are you lecturing on as a professor? And then we'll come back to that question too. I haven't forgotten it.
Yeah, okay, because I've already forgot it. So
I got it. Don't worry, I got you.
Thank you. So my position at Columbia, I'm a professor at Columbia in mechanical engineering, and I teach a few classes. I teach a class currently that in the fall I teach aerospace human factors engineering, which is understanding what a person needs to control a spacecraft or robotic system or an aircraft, and the information they need, and how to display it, and how to interact with it, how to use automation. So it's a human factors engineering class directed toward aerospace applications. It's a lot of stuff that I did. This is a little more academic than the other class I did. It's a little more theoretical, but it's some of the things that I studied in graduate school, when I did my doctoral research in at MIT was in that area, human machine systems. And then also I put in the stuff that I learned at NASA as an astronaut, and flying airplanes with NASA and so on, and spaceships, robot systems, and doing space. So try to interject that there, but it's really about human machine interaction. The second class that I teach in the spring is called Introduction to Human Spaceflight. And that's covering everything from the history of the space program to the space environment to what it takes. It's around people's human spaceflight. So it's how do you safe in space? How do you nourish them, keep them entertained, keep them productive? How do you design spacecraft or spacesuits based on the psychological part of it, but also what we need for life support, what we need to live, how you should design a spacecraft or a habitat or a laboratory in space, and how we use technology in that area too to support people in space. So it's everything about human spaceflight. That's my second class. I teach that in the spring. And then I also teach a short course each semester for first-year students in rocket building, which is kind of fun.
Oh, I love it.
We do that, yeah. So that's kind of more like a fun. It's for first-year students, for freshmen who are interested in mechanical engineering. We design rockets and build them and launch them. So that's what I do. And I also advise the Space Club, and that is very gratifying. The Space Club was started by a couple of students. I was in my third year at Columbia and was approached by a few students, and they wanted to start a club. They didn't have a space club. We don't have aerospace engineering here at Columbia, but we have every other kind of engineering. The aerospace is a little more specialized, and there's an interest in those applications. There are students as electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, or civil engineers. They can certainly participate at any level they want to as engineers in the space program. But they wanted to get a club together to sort of harness that interest across the school. And so I agreed to be their advisor, of course. And that was the initial 3 students came up to me. That was back in 2015, so 8 years ago. The club now has grown to over 400 members and across the school. And they've done some amazing things. They've competed in rocket competitions. They have flown 2 experiments in space. One on a Blue Origin vehicle, which is Jeff Bezos' company. Another one they flew on a SpaceX vehicle to the space station. It was only 2 years ago they did that, and they were able to fly their experiment in space and then get the results back from the space station. So this is pretty extraordinary stuff. But they have about 12 different projects that they work on.
Yeah.
There was about, like I said, over 400 students, but there are about 300 who are active, meaning that they show up to every meeting.
Oh, so I love it.
Meetings every Friday, and fills a gigantic classroom. And then they have, they kind of talk about what's going on overall in the club, and then they work on their individual projects on Friday afternoons. So that's been really gratifying because it's harnessed a lot of the brain power we have here and the interest in the space program at the university. So I those are things that's what I'm doing at Columbia, pretty much.
Oh, wow. I'm fascinated. It's incredible. Hopefully one day when I'm in New York, I'll be able to sit in on one of your lectures. I
love it.
I won't understand a word, but I'm certainly going to listen.
If you don't understand that, I'm not doing my job. It's not meant to be an overly technical class. The only numbers in the books that I refer to are the page numbers typically. It's not very theoretical. It's more practical. And maybe this is more answering your question, that I'm actually, my official title is Professor of Professional Practice, which means I wasn't hired when I was working as a assistant professor at Georgia Tech before I became an astronaut. That was a tenure track, research oriented teaching as well, but could have a lab and research. In this case, it's more that I was hired based on my professional experiences. So I try to relate my practical experience, engineering wise, especially, of what it took to design a spacesuit or build a spaceship or fly in space, but in very practical terms. And they get enough of that theoretical stuff in their other classes. So I try to give them a more practical understanding of how things work, at least in the space program. So you're welcome anytime.
You've convinced me. I'm coming. I'm so excited.
I'm not doing my job if you're not able to understand what I'm
already one of your students now, so I can't wait to come and I cannot wait to come and learn more. So this is my challenge. We're going to be in New York next year. You're going to see me, so I'm going to keep in contact with you. So I'm very excited. Well, this is incredible. And I love how you've humanized the whole experience as well. And you just like this, I've got questions for you. I've got all kinds of things, but I'd love you to touch on the tips and the way that you describe your book, that you or your team described your book on Amazon. You touch on 4 points that I know will touch everyone. So before we do that, I mustn't forget question number 2. Question number 2 was the team thing. And I wanted to talk about that because you mentioned individuals operating within a community, and community being like the primary thing, and the individual's only as good as the community, and you have to survive. And if we look at our world now, people are dying from loneliness, and the United States specifically has really got bad when it comes to an individualistic society, and we've dropped community behind. And we know all the research, and we know from all the Blue Zone work, and we know from mental health that we need community. So could you just talk about that being on a spaceship, and how that would apply and what lessons we could learn?
Certainly, Caroline. And it's interesting when you picked out those two things, like viewing the planet and how it affected me, and also the teamwork part of it, because that's what I really wanted. That's why I really wanted to become an astronaut. Those two things. It wasn't
good.
The other. It was I wanted to experience space flight and view the planet and do that firsthand. But I also wanted to be part of a team that had a shared mission and would take care of each other and do something really cool and do it together with people that I respected and liked and loved. Really, you form that bond between your colleagues.
Special.
It's really unique, and it kind of, I think in our case with the astronaut, and I wasn't disappointed on either account. And when I think about what I miss the space flying, but I also miss being a part of that team. And I would say I miss that even more. And I see my friends. Seen a couple of my. 2 days ago, we had an event it was an Omega watch event, because they're like the supplier watches for the space program, right? So I moderated a panel at this event, and it was Charlie Duke, who was a moonwalker. There's only 12 people walked on the moon, only 4 are still alive. He's the youngest person still to be on the moon, and he's 88 years. And we need to get more people up there soon.
Yeah.
But he was there, and my friend Peggy Whitson, who has more time in space than any American. My friend Mike Lopez Alegria has more time spacewalking than any American. And my friend Nicole Stott, who flew both on the space shuttle and on the space station. And it was just wonderful seeing them. And I never worked with Charlie, the Apollo guy, but still you have that bond. Being NASA astronauts. And last night, my friend Paul Lockhart, an Air Force pilot who was in my astronaut class, very good friend, was in town. I did an event with him too. So that was kind of fun. I got to friends in town here in New York. And that's what I miss. I miss being around people where you have that focus and you really care about each other and you care about what you're doing, and you realize you cannot be successful unless you work together. And I think that's so good. The culture of the military. And I think, the military has different aspects of its culture, but at NASA, I think we were exposed to the good things. And I don't know any bad things, but what I saw was all pretty good. And that was in the idea that you don't throw anyone under the bus, that we need to do this together. If you're good at something, your job is to help those who are having trouble. And if you're having trouble, your job was to admit it and to seek help. And I was introduced to
So
this,
good.
Caroline, my very first week at NASA, what they had warned us about when we were selected. So we were selected and we get a phone call and they tell you, oh, we want you to be an astronaut. Of course, you said, yes, this is going through all the hurdles. You get the good phone call and then you get a package of information in the mail that tells you things you need to do moving to Houston. And one of the things they said right in the cover letter, right after congratulations, was the next paragraph was, please practice your swimming. And they gave us all these requirements we were going to have to take this swim test. And I was like, what? Because we were going to have to pass a swim test in order to go through water survival training with the Navy. And we needed to go through this water survival training. We were going to be in ejection aircraft, so we would have to learn how to get out of an airplane. If you land in the water, you have to survive until they can come find you, right? So there's a survival force for that. And also for the space shuttle, one of the abort scenarios, which wouldn't have been pleasant, would be to bail out of the spaceship and land in the, parachute into the ocean. Like, survive. You got to come get you. So you got to keep yourself alive before they come find you.
Yeah.
So this didn't make sense, but I was like, oh man. And I was kind of glad they didn't ask me. There was no swim test before because I was not a strong swimmer, but they gave us a warning that practice, get ready, because you don't want to not pass this and you won't be able to, continue with the rest of the class. And I practiced, but I wasn't feeling good about this, Carol. I was not a strong swimmer by any means.
Yeah.
Avoided the water most of my life, actually, whenever I could. Anyway, I show up, this first week was a lot of administrative stuff. Mm-hmm. And on the Friday of the last day, that first week, the Friday of that first week, we're about to go home for the weekend. There's 35 Americans and 9 international astronauts. So 44 of us we're in our astronaut class, largest class NASA ever had. Mm-hmm. Jeff Ashby, a Navy pilot from a class ahead of mine, is kind of helping us understand our training. He was like our sponsor. He's going to help when we need help. And he comes in and he says, okay, that first week's over, but our next week, the training starts in earnest. And I want to remind everyone that the first thing we're going to do is the swim test.
Gosh.
I was like, come on. Can we have like a math?
Give me a break.
I don't want to, this is how we're going to start. And I figured I'd somehow get through this, but I'm in here with all these high performing people and these military test pilots and people with a Navy dive qualification. I mean, there were some serious people here, and here I am, I'm going to be bopping around like the nerd ball and they're going to be laughing at me. So I was like, oh boy, here we go. And Jeff continues, he goes, who are the strong swimmers in this class? Who do we have? And a couple people raised their hand. And then he said, more important, who are the weak swimmers? And don't lie to me, I need to know. And so I raised my hand, and so did some others. And then he went on to say, if everyone didn't raise their hand, can go home for the weekend. But those who raised their hand, the strong swimmers and the weak swimmers, you're going to stay after class and you're going to arrange a time to meet at a pool over the weekend. And the strong swimmers are going to help the weak swimmers with their swimming. Because when we go to the pool one day, don't want to leave that pool until everyone passes the test. And I think it was a very clear indication of where I was. That in no way was, I'm not in a world where I'm better than you and I'm going to bury you.
Competition. Yeah.
That's not it. In fact, now I was entering a world where you could beat Michael Phelps and set a world record. But if one of your classmates died, I'm sorry, that's not a good thing. If one of your classmates failed the test, talking about dying right now, but one of your classmates failed the test, then you also fail. And in my end, I didn't want to be the guy who's holding up everybody else. And that's another key point was that you needed to admit that you needed help.
This is brilliant.
You don't want to hold everybody back. And there's no shame in that. So the culture we have, there's no shame in not being able to do something, but you better let people know about it so you can get help. And no one's going to hold that against you. We got together over the weekend and it was actually fun, which surprised me.
Wow.
But my friend Peggy Whitson invited us over to her pool.
Yeah.
We all practiced and I got a lot of pointers and we got to the pool on Monday as a team and everybody passed and it was actually enjoyable. And I wasn't people were not annoyed that they had to help me. It wasn't like, we're irritated, we have to help these people. That's just who we are. And there were times maybe there was something that I was able to help with, and it was my opportunity to do that for other things. But that's what set it up right from the beginning. And that was the culture, the attitude we had, where individual accomplishment is great and that's all wonderful. But what really mattered was how you performed as a team, because in space,
I love this so much.
As in life, I would say, as in life, what we do, you don't do it alone. And if you think you can do it alone, unless I don't know, in some special cases, when you really think about it, it's really hard to do things by yourself, especially in the complicated world we had. And to build that sort of culture was I think was key to us being successful. But more than that, though, Caroline, it was such a wonderful way to go to work. And you are with the people and that you can count on. That I said, I might not see one of my colleagues that I work with, that I flew in space with for a couple of years, and I'll see them again, and it's like no time has passed. And that's a wonderful way to go through life.
Beautiful.
That there's a whole group of people that you can count on. I sometimes refer to it as your mission control center. When the chips are down, reach out to your mission control center and be mission control center for other people. And there's really nothing we wouldn't do for each other. And that, I think you don't have to fight it to get that. That's something that an organization, a team, no matter what you do, whether you're in a financial business or law firm or an engineering company or whatever, in medical field, whatever it might be, you can try to replicate that type of culture and have that same thing.
Oh, this message that you're speaking needs to be out to everyone, because this is fundamental to, it's so important. It's just vital because it's not happening. It's the opposite's happening. It's the opposite. It's all about me, myself, and I. It's a culture of competition as opposed to what you're saying, a culture of enhancement. I mean, look at that, how you went there that weekend, that the strongest one is as strong as the weakest link, and how no one's left behind. And I mean, that's what we're supposed to be doing. So these life lessons that you have are absolutely vital for the current climate that we're in at the moment. And I mean, children at school, politicians, everyone should be hearing this. This is extremely important, and really, we'll do our best to get this message out as much as possible, because the story that you tell attached to it is just, I can relate. Everyone can relate to that story, and it makes you feel. It's why people watch movies. I mean, it's why people will listen to you, because that is what we want and what we need and what we know is the right thing. Yet we're doing the opposite in the majority of this culture. So yeah, it's going to help so much. It's a huge, massive help, mental health help, just to be working on those kinds of things instead of labeling and medicating and that kind of thing. It's beautiful, absolutely wonderful. Well, I love it. I'm so enjoying this conversation, if you haven't already gathered from that. So it's just amazing. So let's jump over to your book. This 1 in a million is not zero. The odds are against you. Do it anyway.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. 1 in a million is not zero. Go for it.
Well, the fun thing about the book was that these lessons that I learned in these stories that seem to resonate, like what we've been talking about, the book gives me a chance to kind of give the backstory to a lot of these things in a little more depth.
Yeah.
The 1 in a million that's not zero is the first chapter. And that came out of, that's something that popped into my mind when I was in grad school up at MIT, and I was almost finished with my PhD, which was also not an easy, I failed my qualifying exam at MIT the first time I took it, and did not do well. And my advisor, when I got the news that I had failed, you usually get a second shot. And he said to me, well, you're entitled to a second shot in 6 months. You can try again, but you did so poorly. The committee was thinking it might not be worth your while.
Oh my gosh.
All right, let me think about it. And I thought about it for a day or so. And I went back and saw my advisor. His name is Tom Sheridan. He's still alive.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a father figure for me. And that kind of warm, he was a good guy. And I said, Tom, I figured what the heck, I'll give it another try. And he kind of smiled and he looked at me and he said in a very professorial way, he said, Mike, if one can learn to live with indignities in life, one can go far, is what he said. And I think
wow. That's so cool. I love that.
That was cool. I'll never forget him saying it. But anyway, that was that's, I kind of had this idea that things don't always work out. You try again and you keep going. But the astronaut thing just seemed near impossible. It was thousands of high qualified people. How do you even get noticed? It's amazing. They were back then, they were getting 7,000 or 8,000 applications to pick a handful of people. And the only people qualified to do the job, how do you figure this one out? And I had been rejected outright, as I said once, and I was about to get rejected a second time because there are certain things that if you don't get called in for an interview and they're done the interviews, they haven't told you no yet, but the answer is going to be no.
Oh gosh.
So I knew that news was coming. At this one point, it was in April of 1992, and I was maybe March. It was March of 1992, and I was about to finish up my PhD, try to get that done. And I was working at home in my apartment. The news was on. That wasn't news. It was the Academy Awards were on, and in the background, and they did. Billy Crystal was the host, and they went to a downlink with the space shuttle. They had like a statuette, an Oscar Academy Award statuette. They're spinning it around. Right? Of course, anything that had to do with the space program was like a magnet drawing me in. So
of course,
that's what I was doing, and went and watched the television. And as I was watching these astronauts on the space shuttle, kind of floating there doing this PR and public relations thing, I knew with clarity that's what I wanted to do. The thought went through my head, that's exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
I knew it with such clarity. Then, Caroline, I would say just a moment went by, and the next thought that came in my head was, but you'll never get to do that. That's impossible. You can't. You'll never get to do that. And I thought about that, and I had this fancy degree that I was getting from MIT, and I was like, well, it's not really impossible. It's just very unlikely. And maybe the odds of me being successful at getting to be an astronaut was 1 out of 1,000,000. That's not zero, Cameron.
I love it.
Number. It's 0 point. There's a decimal point. There's a whole bunch of zeros, but there's a 1 at the end of it.
Exactly. I love it.
And so that's 1. It's not zero. And that's absolutely not zero. Just a very low probability. It's unlikely, but it's not zero. And the only way that 1 disappears and also becomes a 0, and your probability of success is by definition 0, and the outcome for sure, is if you give up. As soon as you give up or you don't try, that's it.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. And I kept that in mind that, the odds are against you, but do it anyway. And even if it doesn't work out the way you expect, if you're pursuing that goal, I thought about this after I interviewed my 4th try, after I got that interview passed.
Wow.
I was waiting for the news. I remember I was on spring break with my family. I was teaching at Georgia Tech, and we went for a trip for spring break. I think it was St. Simon's Island, one of the islands they have over there. And I remember, there with my kids, and I was thinking, if I get told no again, I'm going to keep trying. But I ended in a pretty good place, because at that point I got my PhD. I had some work experience at NASA and got to apply experiments in space. And I had gotten this position at Georgia Tech where I was teaching and really liked that. And I was like, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but I'm going to keep trying because the path is pretty good. The journey is pretty good. And I think that that's important because even if you don't achieve exactly, if it didn't work out, you will probably find yourself in a pretty good place anyway. And as opposed to if you give up. Once you give up, it's like,
yeah, that's so good.
It's unthinkable. So that's what that is all about. And that's the first step.
You're just an absolute inspiration, really. It's absolute inspiration. I'm loving this so much. Okay, the 30-second rule.
Yeah, this is a good one. So this is not in the book, but there's a side. The 30-second rule is, but my friend Woody Holberg, who is he became an astronaut 21 years after I did. We're about 20 years age difference. And he came for friends though, and he did a downlink with the Space Club last spring when he was.
That's amazing.
He got back in September and he wanted to come visit the school and meet with the students. And we had a glorious time with him there. And we did, a little discussion of power. And then we opened it up to panel discussion. We opened it up to the students. And they asked him, what did you learn as an astronaut? What's the most important thing you learned as an astronaut? And he said, I learned how to be comfortable with making mistakes, that you're going to fail at things and you have to become comfortable with it because you can't dwell on it. You can't make too much of it. And I thought that was pretty interesting that that's what he said, because that's what I felt too. I don't know if that's the best thing I've learned as an astronaut, but or the most important thing, but it certainly was an important thing to learn, because we would make mistakes and of course you're in this cadence of trying to get the job done and you don't have a lot of time. I mean, sometimes you have time to we can figure this out, but sometimes like on a spacewalk, you don't have a lot of time. When something goes wrong or you break something,
to fix it fast.
You don't have time because you're going to, you just can't stay out there forever and you're on the clock and life support and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So to dwell in the misery of a mistake is not a good thing, because you're more likely to make another mistake. You're not going to perform.
Yeah.
You can't drown in that misery, and we all feel bad. And so the way the culture we had was everyone's going to make a mistake. We can't prevent that from happening. We can try. We're going to watch out for each other, but when they happen, we're going to let them pass and we're going to deal with it. So the 30-second rule came from my friend Megan MacArthur, was my crewmate, taught it to me. And she had learned it from CJ Sturkey, a Marine pilot that taught it to her. CJ, I talked to him about this. He says it was give yourself 30 seconds of remorse. I call it 30 seconds of regret. I changed a little bit maybe, but kind of the same thing. What if you make a mistake? You're going to make mistakes. So when you make them, this is how I learned to deal with it, is to give yourself a 30-second period of time, set a mental timer, and beat yourself up as unmercifully as you'd like. Call yourself every name in the book. I'm the stupidest astronaut. How did I make this mistake? I can't believe I did that. Why didn't I think of this? Why did I didn't do this differently? Why did they have me here in the first place? I don't know why they selected me. It was a stupid idea to have me go to space in the first place. Don't vocalize any of this. Keep it to yourself. This is an internal rant because you'll scare people. Yeah. But for 30, whatever you want to yourself, and then it's over and it's officially in the past, and you have to engage and be a good crew member and don't wallow in that misery. It's in the past. Done. We're not going to bring it up again. We're going to try to fix whatever happened and move forward. Leave your mistakes in the past. Let that mistake pass. And we used to say that, but I didn't know how to do that until I learned the 30-second rule, because I did want to get mad at myself. So 30 seconds, cap it there and move on. So that's the 30-second rule.
Brilliant. And I love that. I'm going to use that. And there's so much neurobiology behind that as well, because if you keep it in, it just makes you worse. It messes up all your neurophysiology and your wisdom, and you can't think straight and you can't. So by doing that, you get it, so it's good. Get it out and then move forward. And that's the underlying. I love it. I love that. That's really great.
Because you wallow in it. It could go on for weeks. I mean, I would beat myself up days or weeks. Oh, I can't believe that happened. Nothing you can do about it. There's no time machine. You can't go back and fix it.
No.
So that's it. Move forward.
Move.
Don't do it again. Learn from it. Maybe you might need to adapt your behavior if you're doing things a little bit too cavalierly, and you need to change the way you're approaching things. But don't wallow in that misery. It's not going to be productive.
So good. So good. I love these. Okay. Be amazed. The universe is an incredible place. Stop what you're doing and look around. Love it.
Yeah, that's similar to what we were talking about
in the beginning.
In the beginning, but we are so lucky to be here. The Hubble has shown us the beauty of the universe, but even what we have around us is just so amazing. And I think like when, especially with the pandemic, when we were kind of stuck inside a lot, and I think we lost a lot of that of just getting around people and engaging with the outside world. It is a miracle that we're here. It's a miracle we have this beautiful place to live, and we should try to enjoy it as much as we can. So that's where that came from. There was a time on one of my first spacewalk, I had this sense of, what is this all about? And so what is the Earth going to be like when I get out there and look at it? And the pilot on my first flight was a classmate of mine. We're the only two rookies on a flight. His name was Dwayne Terry. Digger was his nickname. And he made me make him a promise that as soon as I got in the airlock after my first spacewalk, I was going to tell him exactly what it was like out there, because he wasn't going to get a chance to see the same thing out. He could look, what's it like? I'm not going to be able to go out there, right? But you can tell me. And I got in the airlock and he's there right there ready to for the right time to help me would take my helmet off.
Yeah.
He's right in my face. And we got the suit depressed, so everything was safe to take the suit off. And my helmet pops off and he's right there in my face. And he says, "What was it like?" And I said, "Digger, you won't believe it." He goes, "What?" I go, "The Earth is a planet." He's like, "What? What was going on?" And I go, "It's a planet. It's not that we think of the Earth as a safe cocoon, but it's not that at all. It's a planet. You can see the Earth and you can look and you can see the stars and the moon and the sun, black sky. And as you go around the planet, 90 minutes, I said earlier, it's about 45 minutes of sunlight, which is beautiful, bright sunlight. It is like a pure white light. I could see things so clearly. I'm even looking down at the colors on the American flag on my arm, and it just was so beautiful and vibrant.
Wow.
Beautiful light from our sun, not being filtered through the atmosphere or through a window any longer either. When you're inside the spaceship, you're getting the direct sunlight. And then in the darkness, it's the darkest dark I've ever experienced. It's like the absence of all light. And the only way to do your work is for the helmet lights and lights around the spacecraft illuminating that. And the temperature swing in space between direct sunlight and darkness is about a 400 degree swing. It's over 200 degrees Fahrenheit in the sun and about minus 200 darkness. You don't feel it because you have your spacesuit on and your spaceship. And so it modulates that. And you have a temperature control valve. You have cooling water around you. So it keeps you at the right temperature so you don't get too hot or too cold. But you feel the change in the temperature before you see it. So if we're on dark side of the planet because it's nighttime, feel the warmth before it's kind of, if you're in the ocean or in the water and you feel a warm or a cold current and you feel like down in your bones, that's what it was like. So you'll feel the warmth and then you just wait a moment and then you'll see the sun. And I remember seeing it in space the first time I saw the sun in the black sky. And then you look back down at the planet and there's a line where it's dark on this side and it's bright on this other side. We call that the Terminator. And that's because it's nighttime over here and it's sunlight over here. And you're looking at this and that line is moving and it's just tracking across the planet. And what that is, it's the planet's rotation as it shows another part of itself to the sun. And on the other end of it, there's a part going into darkness. And the motion of that, the dance between the sun and the moon and the stars and the earth, and this is going on for billions of years, and there was a permanence in it, Caroline, that just staring at that motion, there was no hesitation, there was no hiccup. It was just this gigantic planet just moving at this steady pace and always never stopped, just total continuous, steady, constant motion. And it is miraculous. And we think of a sunrise or a sunset as being beautiful. We see the sun come up and the sun go down at night, and the sun's not going anywhere. We're the ones that are moving. And it all has worked out to create this beautiful place that we get to live in. And so I think we should be amazed every day that we get a chance to be here.
Oh, a day is not going to pass that I'm not going to stay amazed. You just painted such a picture for me. I got completely consumed and absorbed, and I would have been that guy there. Tell me now, in your face. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's just like, if people could just grab the joy that you're generating from your experience, it's life changing. So, wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing that so beautifully. Well, we've got time for one more. To know when to pivot. Change is inevitable, accept and embrace it. Once again, another fabulous statement.
Yeah, I think that comes out of my experience, both personally and with the space program pivoted. Toward the end of the space shuttle program, it was time to move to another spaceship. We had the second accident on Space Shuttle Columbia, and we knew it was time that we were going to have to get another spaceship. And NASA took that opportunity to start working with commercial enterprise, like companies like SpaceX, build a spaceship. And we were like, are you serious? Like, NASA's not going to be in charges. We're going to hand that off.
Big shift.
Funding. What are we doing? And we've now seen I mentioned how much I've flown things in space, and it's opened up the opportunities for economic development. Yeah. And we really were on the edge of greatness, but at the time we didn't realize that. Really.
No, it's difficult to see that shift.
We don't like this idea. And there was so much automation that was going into the new spaceship Now, we weren't happy with that either. We wanted to be in control of things.
Yeah.
But we started realizing that the automation and the new technology was actually much safer than what we had. It was going to keep us alive, give us a greater chance of surviving accidents than what we had before. And okay, and the reusability and the other technology that they were going to be incorporating was going to bring the cost down so that more people can go with less training and open up all kinds of opportunities for growth for both NASA and for the private sector. So, but that was hard to accept that at the time, and change is coming. You gotta realize that that's happening and get on board with it. Not if it's a really obviously bad thing, but just the new technology, a new way of doing things, that the world changes, that people change. You can't stay in the same spot. Think you might. It was great for a while. For 30 years, the space shuttle flew. I was there right in the middle. I didn't know that when I ended up joining right at the middle after the first 15 years. And then the last 15 years was when I was there, and then the shuttle was retired. So it was, I think a great spaceship and a great program, but it had come to an end. And as sad as we were about that, we needed to accept what was coming next. And then the other part of it, I think, is personal,
good.
Which is, I mean, change is there, accept it, get on board, or else you're going to be left behind. You got to get out of the way. And the other part of it was knowing when to pivot in your life, which is kind of hard to do, especially in my case. For me, this is something as talked about, I wanted to do since I was a little kid. Since I was 6 years old, I dreamt about growing up to be like Neil Armstrong. And I didn't quite make it there. I didn't become a test pilot, but I did become an astronaut.
You did a lot.
I did a lot. I got to meet Neil Armstrong and become with them. And this is but I was able to do that. I got this great opportunity to fly in space. And I got to fly to Hubble twice and
contributed to dark matter, to understanding. I mean, that's massive.
It's great. I was very happy and very happy to be and proud and thrilled to be a part of the Hubble team. But as time goes on, things change and the way you feel about things change. And I would never have thought that there would have been a time that I felt like I was ready to leave the astronaut office when I first started. But the first indication I had, Caroline, that it was time to think about a pivot was the end of my second flight. We had a couple extra days in space because luckily the weather was bad in Florida. We couldn't come home. So we basically 2 extra days with nothing else to do except look out the window. And I looked out the window and it was glorious, listening to music and enjoyed the view and got to think. And the thing that the emotion that came over me that I never thought I would experience was satisfaction. I felt like satisfied with what had happened. I was so grateful for what I had gotten to do. And I started thinking, I didn't have that same, like, I got to go to space again. I want to do this or that. It was kind of like, this is pretty cool. I'm so happy for what has happened. And I felt satisfied. And that was kind of weird. And then coming back from that mission, I just started thinking about other things that I might do. And the most telling sign, and I think we tell ourselves things by our actions when we're put in a position where we have to make a decision. Well, my friend Peggy Whitson, who I've mentioned a couple of times, was the chief of our office. She was the first female and the first civilian to be the chief of the astronaut office. My good friend. I just saw her. She was here in New York. Really good friend of mine.
Incredible.
She calls me and she said she wanted to assign me to a long duration flight on a Soyuz to go to the space station for 6 months. And she laid out the plan. It was going to be 3 years of training, most of the time out of the country, which would have been fine. That would have been great. But my kids were both, Daniel was about to start high school. Gabby was starting to finish up, but I would have missed both of them in high school pretty much. I felt like, and then I would have been in space for 6 months, would have been okay. That would be great, of course. But I thought about it and I just didn't have that strong desire to go. And Peggy said, take a day, think about it and come see me. And I thought about it with my family a bit, but it was my decision to make. And I went in to see my friend the next day and I said, Peggy, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm going to have to tell you no. And what I felt is that to do something like that, to fly in space and do it correctly, I think to do it the right way, you've got to want to do it really badly. And I'm willing to eat dirt to do that. I'll do it. I won't do anything illegal or immoral or unethical. You don't want to go there. But but I would have sacrificed or done whatever I felt I needed to do, try my hardest. And that's what it takes, I think, to be successful at things that are difficult.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have that burning desire. I said, hey, I don't think my heart's in it. I don't think I can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't think I'd be happy. And I don't think I would do a good job because my heart wouldn't be in it. And she says, I understand. I'm going to keep you in mind for other opportunities. I'm disappointed, but I understand. And I walked out of her office and I realized that there was a before and after to that moment.
Wow.
I realized that was it. What was I telling myself? What my heart and soul was saying to me, that you've had enough. It's a good run and maybe it's time for something else. And then I started thinking more seriously about what am I going to do after? And I think that I appreciate this conversation we're having because to me, it's an example of what you can do after a great experience. Because I started to, I worked luckily I had the experience working in academics as a professor at Georgia Tech. It was only in a year that I was there, but it gave me the opportunity to, when I got selected by NASA, to know that there was something that I thought
you could go back. Yeah.
Had to. And I didn't think about that until I got to the end of what ended up being the end of my career at NASA. But I talked to a few different people. I don't know if this is going to go out on YouTube, but behind me, you can see this. This is a lithograph painted by my friend, Alan Bean, who was the fourth person who walked on the moon. I talk about him a lot in the book. He became a good friend and mentor. And he had a second career. He had this left brain, right brain thing that I don't know. Maybe you can understand it. I've never seen anyone with such technical ability as a engineer, test pilot, and astronaut, but also be able to paint so beautifully and be able to describe things so beautifully, artistically. So he dedicated the second part of his life, almost exactly half, the second half.
Wow.
So I would speak to him and get advice from other people about everything, whatever was going on in my career. And so I was spending some time with Alan afterwards. And when I was after my second flight, and he was saying, don't look at it as an ending, look at it as another phase. And you can stay at NASA. You could go into management. You can still try to fly. One of my classmates is still flying, Don Pettit, who's older than me, is going to turn 70 years old in space in a couple.
Wow, that's incredible.
So you could stay there. You can go and to do other things, but he said, look at it as another opportunity to do something really special. And so I thought of what could I do? Where I could still feel like I was contributing, but still be part of the space program and be happy. And the answer for me was try to go back to teaching and writing. I hadn't done any real writing at that point, and talking about it and sharing the experiences and because it was an extraordinary run. And so I feel very grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you about it. And that's what I decided to do. And I think there's always that twinge of regret, like, never could have, what it would have been like if I was staying.
Yeah.
But I think in my mind and in my heart, that was the right decision at the time. And if you make the right decision at the time and you question it, I think that's normal. But over time, you realize that, that was the best decision to make. And so that's where I ended up. And it's hard to know when it's time to do something else, but to listen to what you're telling yourself. Look at your actions, and I knew I wanted to be an astronaut and I wanted to be part of the space program because anytime I walked by the newsstand and there was an article about space, or there was something on television about space, or someone would say something, I could feel in my heart that I became alive. It was like a different level of consciousness when it was something to do with the space program that was in me since I was a little boy. And I think it was the same thing when it was time to leave, that it was, you have to listen to what am I telling myself with my actions? It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that, life moves on and you go through different experiences. And even though I would have never thought there was a time to pivot, there was. And that's the way it worked out. And I'm happy about the way it went. It was a tough decision, but I'm happy with the way it all turned out.
Oh, wow. I have words. I hardly have words. Wow. I'm glad you pivoted, because otherwise how are we going to learn all this from you? Because you're playing a completely different role in the world as well. All that experience. I mean, you know how I would describe this particular podcast, and I have interviewed many, many people. Gloriously satisfied, to take your words, Yeah, I thought that was, I mean, and I'd have to have you, you've got to come back again because there's so much we can talk about and it's been fantastic. And thank you for what you chose to do for your pivot, because we now can learn so much from you and reinforce those lessons and walk out of here amazed, really amazed at how beautiful it is to be alive and to be alive on this planet. And so thank you so much, Mike, for being on Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess today and helping us just see the world in a different way. It's been such a pleasure, such a gloriously satisfied pleasure.
Well, thank you for being such a great host. And I really enjoyed it. It was absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And thank you for helping all the people you help and having me be a part of that as well.
Thank you so much. And last thing, very quickly, where can people get hold of your book and learn more about you and maybe invite you to come and speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to get a hold of me, if you're interested in having me or reaching out, or whatever it is, contact me about speaking or an opportunity or just to say hi or whatever it is that you want to contact me about, is best to go to my website, mikemassimino.com. There's a way you can contact me there. There's also, you can order the book, Moonshot, NASA Astronaut's Guide to Achieving the Impossible. I think I got that right.
Yes, I think you got that right.
You know, anywhere you want to go, your local bookseller is great if you're able to do that. If not, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everywhere else it's out there. And if my website has those options as well. But wherever you're accustomed to buying your books, you'll be able to find Moonshot.
Fantastic. Well, we'll have all those links and details in the show notes for people, and people can look forward to hearing you back again on my podcast, and you'll see me at one of your lectures for sure.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. You're welcome anytime.
Well, keep in touch. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Mike.